So let's take a look at the Kubernetes architecture from 40,000 feet, or what I like to call as a big picture view. At the highest level, Kubernetes is an orchestrator for microservice apps that run on containers. And a microservice app is just a fancy name for an application that's made up of lots of small and independent services. But when you bring them together and they talk to each other, they create this more meaningful or more useful app. In the real world, a football team is made up of individuals. No two are alike, and each has got a different role to play in the team. Some sit back and defend, some push forward and attack, some are good at tackling, some at shooting, etc. Anyway, we have got a bunch of players with different skills and abilities. Then comes along the manager or the coach, and he or she gives everybody a position, like a job, organizes them into a unit, and we go from this kind of mess to this beautiful formation. Something that I guess we can all say looks like a team with a plan that can accomplish something useful. The manager also makes sure that the team keeps its shape and it's in tip top condition by subbing off injured players and the likes. Well, guess what? Microservice apps in the Kubernetes world are just like this. We start out with an app made up of multiple services, each packaged as a pod, and we are massively high level at this point. But you know what? Each one's got a job within the overall app. So we have got load balancers and web servers, and Kubernetes comes along a bit like the coach in the football team analogy, and it organizes things so that they work together on the right networks with the right secrets. And what we end up with is a useful app made up of lots of smaller moving parts. And we call this what Kubernetes is doing orchestration. So it's orchestrating all of these pieces together and making them work together. We package it up and we give it to the cluster being Kubernetes. And it's made up of one or more masters and a bunch of nodes. Well, the masters are in charge and they make the decisions about which nodes to run the work on. And the bits that run on the master make up what we call the cluster control plane. So it's all that stuff that monitors the cluster and makes the changes, schedules the work, responds to events. This is the master or the control plane. Then comes the nodes. These run the actual work. As well as that, they do stuff like they report back to the masters and they watch for changes. That's our infrastructure stuff, masters and nodes. But at the start, we said that we packaged up our application and we gave it to the cluster. Well, the best way to do that these days is probably as Kubernetes deployment. So we have got our code and we containerize it. Then we define it in an object called as a deployment. To do this, we write it up or we define it in a YAML file. It's just a manifest that tells Kubernetes what our app should look like. So it basically tells Kubernetes to use what ports, networks, how many replicas, all that stuff in a file. We give the file to Kubernetes on the master here, and the master looks at the file and deploys the app on the cluster. And then everything falls into place, and there is our app. So this was the big picture view of the Kubernetes architecture.